Welcome to the Put on Waivers Media Group, home of the Put on Raiders podcast and the Student Body Right podcast. This is your place for the best breakdowns and the best insight for those who fight on and bleed silver and black. Now, here are your hosts, Dwayne Douglas and Ryan Holmes.
Welcome, everybody, to another glorious episode of Student Body Right, USC podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Douglas, and as always, I am podcasting on the beautiful shores up the Pacific Ocean. Beautiful day out here in Southern California. POR. SPR is my Twitter handle, so check me out there. Obviously, a lot of you guys watch the show, listen to the show. Just give us, just do us a favor, man. Like, subscribe, all that stuff like that. May leave a comment. We love that stuff. We'll be answering your questions with Coach B coming up soon. Excuse me. So check me out there. Sorry for the little morning little nose here we got going on. So USC, Illinois, and I think that if we have to label these shows, like, when you watch your favorite TV shows, all those episodes have names. I think this would be like the name of this show would be like Respect. So I get there is probably not in this game a single stat line that shows Illinois can beat SC. We just gotta call like it is. Like, this is so let me just show you the depth. Talk about the depths of Illinois here. They are a man-to-man, blitzing defense against a Lincoln Rally. Like, that's usually not the way you want to attack a Lincoln Rally offense. Man to man, he usually has, man beaters for that. You're going to win some of those battles, but if you lose them, it's going to be a touchdown a lot of the times. So you have that part of it, and then you're going to blitz a lot. And I mean, you can blitz SC. You can blitz at SC. I mean, the SC will probably in this game probably be without Elijah Page, their best offensive lineman. But even when he wasn't there last week against the Spartans, you didn't even notice that he wasn't there, right? I mean, it was pretty interesting. Like, I didn't even notice he wasn't. You didn't even notice he was there. I was like, wait a minute. I watched it because RG3 was doing the game, so I was watching the game without no sound. Sorry. And I was like, wait a minute, I saw a couple of run plays and I was like, hey, wait a minute, where is Elijah Page? And then finally I had to turn it back up and they said he was hurt. So, but Respect is still there. This is a Big Ten opponent on the road with a veteran quarterback who will probably get drafted. Luke Altmaier is not a first round pick, but he will get drafted in the draft this year, in the draft in 2026. So he can play. And if he gets any sorts of time, I think he can make some plays down the field. The biggest thing in this game would be is he going to release the ball, at the top of his drop and be able to just get it out quickly to those receivers. I mean, because if he can, then this game is going to be, USC could give us some points here. But I remember I mentioned some of these stats that are interesting in this game. And one is the fact that USC is one of the country's leaders, nation's leaders in sacks. And then by every statistical metric, this is the worst offensive line in Power 4. Let me repeat. This is the worst offensive line in Power 4. So what could they possibly? So what are the things that they could possibly do in this game? Some trick plays here and there. Some just getting the ball out quick. Which, if they're going to get the ball out quick, you got to be able to be ready to jump on some of those routes. And get into the passing lanes for slants and some quick go routes with safety coverage over the top. Like, you gotta be ready for those things. But in this game, we're sitting here talking about like, this is the worst offensive line against the one of the best defensive lines in football. Now the defensive line will not have Jakeem Stewart. For the he was in a walking boot, so we'll see if that injury is how big that injury is. Unfortunately for him, because he was coming off one of his best games, he had 17 snaps, and we also the tackle for lost plays that he was coming up with, that he looked fantastic with in that game against Michigan State. But at the end of the day, like I mean, like we have to, they got to do what's right, and make sure the health of the player is there for the long season. So we'll see what happens. See what happens there. But how do they overcome that part of it? Because there's gonna be a section of the game where USC's defensive line takes over and gets to the quarterback. Now he's mobile. Look Altmaier, but not he's not Michael Vick mobile. He's not gonna be running around like Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. But he can move. So can they move the pocket? And but then if you move the pocket to left or right, it shortens the field. Like there's a lot of different avenues in this game where like how do you account for a offensive line that's playing poorly and then you're just not a really good offensive line. So if I'm SC, I'm just trying to kick the ball in the back of the end zone, limit my penalties, and force them to run a lot of plays to score. Like they just can't be any one play touchdowns in this game for them. Just can't be one play touchdowns for them at all. And if you give a lot of one play touchdowns in this game, like that's where they're going to that's where they're going to kill you. Is giving up one play touchdowns. There should be, I mean, like at this some point, Dan Lynn has to slow this secondary down and be able to have them take a deep breath and not have these coverage busts in these games. Because I would have to think, even though they're outmanned and their secondary's banged up, and their best slot corner won't be able to play because of injury. He's out for the year. So I'm kind of looking forward to that battle with Scott and Lemon. But now we're not going to get that battle. So there should be people open. Should be people ready to go for SC in this game. And again, you're trying to find ways to keep this game close, but Illinois will just on the heart alone, you would think they're going to play better than they did against Indiana. Now you give it's a real easy kind of job as a head coach. After a blowout, you get an opponent come into your building, and then you can pull the nobody respects us card. Big fancy USC from California is coming in here, and they can paint whatever picture they want to their team. But at the end of the day, there's going to be a portion of the game where USC controls it. And what does USC do when they control the game? Are they scoring touchdowns or are they kicking field goals? But I would say respect this opponent. I respect this head coach. I respect Coach Bellama. He's one of the best coaches in college football. Also a guy who was working with who Bill Belichick had him in to pick his brain at times. So it's not like he's not some babbling idiot. Like he knows what he's talking about. He knows what he is as a head coach. So I would say be careful of that. Be careful of the quarterback situation there as well. If they can get pressure on Luke Altmaier, then good to go. Yes, sir. We'll take 2 of those. If they can get pressure on him, they should be able to get pressure on him. Like Dan Lynn is not a guy who's he likes to rush with the front 4, but he's definitely not shy about bringing a blitz. And they don't have to worry about him getting out of the pocket. What you do have to worry about with Luke Altmaier is a guy who can be sneaky as far as 3rd and 7 and sneaking out the back way of your pass rush if you're not in your pass rush lanes, and then getting 8 yards and sliding and keeping the drive going. But USC needs to make these drives long, and then also make these drives, put these drives in a position, put this Illinois in a position where they have to go the length of the field and run a lot of plays. And at some point in those, when they're running a lot of plays, you're going to get home. And when you get home, that's where those drives should stop. So we'll see what happens out there in Champaign, Illinois. Well, it should be a great scene out there. Homecoming, interesting choice for homecoming. Usually you pick you pick a homecoming game where you're going to win. You know, you're going to win. So we'll see if Illinois, and let's see what they have against the Trojans. All right. So anybody right, USC podcast. We will have some interesting guests on Thursday. Thursday's going to be a bunch of shows on Thursday, so check us out there. And we'll see you next time. And as always, folks, fight on.